The void doesn't care. It never has. It stretches cold and indifferent across light-years of nothingness, swallowing stars whole and spitting out nebulae like cosmic ash. And into this uncaring dark, the galaxy's great powers carved their empires, not with love but with fire, fear, and the cold calculus of survival. For millennia, the Cathar hegemony reigned supreme. Their crystalline warships, shimmering like fractured obsidian, patrolled the spiral arms. Their society, ancient and rigid as neutron star crust, valued order above all, harmony, predictability. They saw the universe as a grand, intricate machine and themselves as its meticulous engineers. Chaos was a flaw to be excised, life that defied categorization, a dangerous anomaly. Then came the humans, not with fanfare, not with grand declarations. They stumbled out of their cradle, a blue-green marble orbiting an unremarkable yellow star like feral pups kicked from a burning kennel. The Cathar found them first, or rather, their long-range sensors did. A single, battered generation ship, Odyssey's End, limping through the Oort cloud of Sol system, broadcasting a distress signal in a language that sounded like rocks grinding together. The Cathar High Conclave debated, a primitive species barely spacefaring, clinging to a world already scarred by its own folly. But their biosignatures, anomalous, resilient, too resilient. Their genetic code pulsed with chaotic redundancies, viral fragments woven into their very DNA like shrapnel from forgotten wars. They healed faster, adapted quicker, survived environments that should have liquefied lesser beings. Deathworlders. The Cathar term was clinical, dismissive, a biological curiosity, a potential threat vector. The Conclave's verdict was swift, sterile, containment protocol theta, not conquest, not enslavement, erasure, a surgical strike, a demonstration of the hegemony's absolute authority over the chaotic fringe. One standard cycle later, the Cathar fleet of purification arrived in system, not with blaring horns but with the silent, terrifying grace of falling stars. Their primary weapon wasn't kinetic. It was conceptual. A resonance cascade device, tuned to the unique quantum signature of Earth's core. It didn't explode. It unmade. One moment, Sol the Thrid was a vibrant tapestry of oceans, continents, and the frantic, hopeful glow of human civilization. The next, static. A spreading cloud of incandescent dust, cooling rapidly into the void. Silence where a world song had thrummed for billions of years. The Odyssey's End, shielded by sheer dumb luck in the outer system, recorded it all. The final, choked transmission from mission control. God help us. It's just gone. Then static, eternal. That was the end of humanity's home, but not the end of humanity. 20 standard cycles later, the ashes had cooled. The Cathar moved on, satisfied. The anomaly was contained. The lesson delivered, order restored. They turned their crystalline gaze to other, more predictable corners of the galaxy. They forgot the feral pups, or believed they had. They were wrong. Deep within the swirling radioactive nebula known as the Vale of Tears, a graveyard of shattered worlds and forgotten battles, a different kind of ship drifted. Not crystalline, not sleek, brutal, forged from scavenged Cathar hull plating, asteroid iron, and the twisted spars of a dozen dead vessels. It was a leviathan cobbled together from cosmic wreckage, bristling with jury-rigged weapons that spat plasma like dragon's breath. Its name etched in crude, defiant lettering across the scarred bow, Ashen Reckoning. Inside its cavernous, dimly lit command deck, the air hung thick with ozone, recycled sweat, and the metallic tang of old blood. Holographic displays flickered, casting long, dancing shadows. At the center, gripping the worn armrests of a command throne salvaged from a Cathar dreadnought, sat Commander Thorne. His face was a roadmap of survival, deep lines etched by grief and vacuum exposure. Eyes the color of storm clouds holding a galaxy of pain. A jagged scar, pale against his weathered skin, ran from temple to jawline. A souvenir from the day Earth died. He wasn't old, not by human standards, but the weight of extinction had aged him decades. He stared at the main view screen, not at the swirling nebula outside, but at a small, worn locket clutched in his calloused hand. Inside, a faded image. A woman with kind eyes and a child's gap-toothed grin. Gone. All gone. Status Kale. Thorne's voice was a low rasp like stone dragged over stone. From a console banked with flickering, mismatched components, a younger man swiveled. Kale Vance. Lean, intense, with eyes that burned with a fire Thorne had long since banked. His movements were quick, precise, a stark contrast to Thorne's weary stillness. Perimeter sensors clean, Commander. Nebula interference, holding. No Cathar signatures within 10 light-years. Just the usual cosmic static and ghosts. He didn't look up, his fingers dancing over the controls. The whisper reports the salvage op on Gamma 7 went hot. Lost 2 teams. Cathar patrol frigate showed up unexpected. They barely made jump. Thorne closed the locket with a soft click. Casualties? 3 confirmed KIA. 2 MIA. Probably vacuum. Kale's voice was flat, professional, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. They got the core, though. Enough. Helium-3 to keep the reckoning running for another cycle. And something else. He tapped a command. A secondary screen lit up, showing grainy sensor data, buried deep in the wreckage. Cathar data crystal. Heavily encrypted, but our slicer Ren thinks she can crack it. Might be. The Thorne's storm cloud eyes narrowed. Intel was oxygen out here. It ran on it. Priority Alpha. He pushed himself up, the old bones protesting. And Kale, tell the families. Properly. Name the dead. Remember them. He walked towards the viewport, his boots echoing on the grated deck. Outside, the veil of tears swirled, a monument to cosmic indifference. We don't forget, not ever. Light years away, aboard the pristine, silent command spire of the Cathar hegemony's 7th Fleet, High Strategos Violin observed the same nebula on a flawless crystalline display. Violin was tall, impossibly slender, his chitinous exoskeleton polished to a high sheen, reflecting the soft, cool light, his multifaceted eyes clusters of obsidian beads, processed data streams invisible to lesser beings. He radiated an aura of absolute, unshakable calm. Order, control, Strategos. A subordinate, Sub-Commander Zorn chimed, his voice a series of precise clicks and hums, translated by the ambient field. The anomaly persists. Scattered energy signatures within the veil of tears, consistent with primitive fusion reactors and human biosignatures. Balin didn't turn. His thoughts flowed like liquid mercury. The feral pups, still clinging to the ashes. How inefficient. How messy. Probability of coordinated threat. Negligible. Strategos. Scavengers. Survivors. Their technology is crude. Their tactics predictable. They lack the cohesion, the resources, the discipline for anything beyond desperate raids. Zyber's mandibles clicked dismissively. A nuisance. Like vermin in the waste reclamation conduits. Vermin Valen echoed, the word tasting like ash in his mind. He remembered the initial reports from Sol System, the sheer chaotic waste of it, the unnecessary suffering. Humans didn't just die, they fought dying. Screamed defiance into the void as their world dissolved. It was illogical, disturbing. They are a flaw in the pattern, Zyre, an echo of chaos that refuses to fade. Containment Protocol Theta was incomplete. He finally turned, his obsidian eyes fixing on Zyre, assigned the silent judgment. A light cruiser. Sweep the veil. Locate their nest. Erase it. Permanently. This time ensure all traces are eliminated. No loose ends. No ghost. Zyre bowed his head. A precise, economical movement. It shall be done, Strategos. Order will be restored. Valen watched the nebula swirl on the display. Let the ashes finally settle. Back on the Ashen reckoning, Ren worked in her sanctum, a cramped, chaotic nest of wires, flickering screens, and half-eaten nutrient paste tubes. Ren's solace was small, wiry, with fingers that moved faster than thought, and eyes that saw patterns in the static others missed. Her dark hair was perpetually escaping its messy braid. She hunched over the Cathar data crystal, connected to a jury-rigged decryption rig that sparked ominously. Sweat beaded on her forehead. The Cathar encryption was brutal, layered with fractal logic traps designed to fry lesser minds, but Ren wasn't lesser. She was human, and humans, she'd learned, were good at breaking things that weren't meant to be broken. "Come on, you shiny bastards," she muttered, her voice tight with concentration. "Show me what you're hiding." Lines of alien code scrolled past, nonsensical glyphs resolving into fragmented schematics, fleet deployment logs, and then a name. A designation that made her blood run cold, Silent Judgment. And coordinates. Not just any coordinates. Their coordinates? The heart of the Vale of Tears. The location of the Ashen Reckoning's hidden dry dock. Her breath hitched. She scrambled, cross-referencing sensor logs, comms intercepts she'd been passively collecting. A faint, almost imperceptible energy signature, matching Cathar cruiser-class emissions, converging on their position. Fast. Kyle Commander, her voice, usually sharp with sarcasm, was raw with panic as she slammed the comm button. "They found us. Cathar cruiser. Silent Judgment. Incoming. ETA. 2 hours. Maybe less. They have our location." On the command deck, Thorne's head snapped up. The storm in his eyes ignited into a furnace. Kale was already moving, barking orders into the ship-wide comm. "Battle stations. All hands. Scramble the Raptors. Seal bulkheads. Ren, get that crystal wiped and dump it into the nearest singularity." The Ashen Reckoning groaned to life. A beast, roused from slumber. Klaxons wailed, harsh and urgent. Red emergency lights bathed the deck in blood-colored gloom. Crew members, faces grim but resolute, sprinted to their posts. The quiet tension of survival shattered, replaced by the razor's edge of imminent annihilation. Thorne strode back to his command throne. The locket clenched so tightly in his fist his knuckles turned white. He looked at the main view screen. The swirling nebula seemed to pulse with malevolent intent. He saw not just the approaching Cathar ship, but the ghost of Earth, the faces of the billions lost, the weight of extinction pressed down, but beneath it something else stirred. Not just grief. Rage. Cold, hard, and utterly focused. "Kale," Thorne said, his voice cutting through the din, low and dangerous as a drawn blade. "Arm the Scourge." Full yield. Cal froze, his hand hovering over the weapons console. "Scourge. Commander?" "But the nebula. The radiation bloom. It'll fry our own systems. It'll blind us." "It'll blind them too," Thorne stated, his eyes fixed on the incoming blip on the tactical display. "And it'll buy us the one thing we need." He turned, meeting Kale's wide eyes. "Time to make them remember what they erased." He activated the ship-wide comm, his voice booming through every corridor, every cramped quarters, every terrified heart. "This is Commander Thorne. Listen up. They took our home. They tried to take us. They think we're ghosts in the ashes. Let's show them ghosts burn." He paused, the weight of 20 cycles of loss and fury in his next words. "For Earth, for everyone they erased. Make them pay in blood and fire." The Ashen Reckoning surged forward, engines screaming, a jagged silhouette against the cosmic graveyard, charging not away from the hunter, but towards it. A suicide run wrapped in vengeance. The Silent Judgment, a sleek dagger of obsidian, emerged from the nebula's edge, its weapons arrays glowing with lethal intent. On the Kitha Bridge, Strategos Valen watched the primitive human vessel accelerate on a collision course. Illogical, suicidal, chaotic. A flicker of something unfamiliar disquiet passed through his ordered mind. "Fools," he clicked. "Eliminate them. Cleanly." The Silent Judgment's forward cannons flared, lances of coherent energy tearing through the void. The Ashen Reckoning's point defense turrets spat back, a desperate hail of kinetic rounds and plasma bolts. Shields flared and buckled under the Cathar assault. Hull plates screamed as they were vaporized. "Scourge charged," Ren yelled from her station, her voice cracking. "Firing solution locked." "Fire!" Thorne roared. Deep within the Reckoning's belly, A device older than the ship itself, cobbled together from salvaged Cathar tech and human desperation, unleashed its fury. Not a weapon of destruction, but of disruption. A pulse of raw, chaotic Croniton radiation erupted, not aimed at the Cathar ship but into the heart of the Veil of Tears nebula itself. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The swirling gases and dust already superheated and ionized went critical. A wave of blinding, multi-spectrum radiation, gamma rays, X-rays, particle storms exploded outwards, engulfing both ships in a maelstrom of pure, annihilating energy. Sensors screamed and died. View screens dissolved into static snow. The Ashen reckoning shuddered violently, lights flickering, systems overloading. Alarms became a continuous, deafening shriek. On the silent judgment, Valen's perfect calm shattered. His multifaceted eyes reflected the blinding chaos on his displays. Shields failing, structural integrity compromised. This is impossible. The nebula, it's reacting. The radiation wasn't just damaging, it was interfering with their very technology, their crystalline matrices resonating chaotically. Order was dissolving into noise. Inside the reckoning, Thorne was thrown from his throne as the deck bucked like a dying animal. Sparks rained from the ceiling, smoke filled the air. He tasted blood through the static on the main screen. He saw the silhouette of the silent judgment, not destroyed but crippled, its sleek form darkening, tumbling end over end, caught in the radiation storm they had triggered. A grim, bloody smile touched Thorne's lips. "Got you." But then, through the dying static, a new signal pierced the chaos. Not Cathar, stronger, sharper, filled with cold, ancient fury. It bypassed their fried comms, resonating directly in their bones, in their very minds. A voice not translated but felt, a psychic broadcast of pure, unadulterated contempt and command. "You dare? You filthy, chaotic vermin dare strike at the hegemony? Your existence is an affront. Your extinction is inevitable. Prepare for judgment." The voice belonged to Grand Strategos Kaelin, Valen's superior, the architect of Earth's erasure, and his fleet signature, massive. Dozens of capital ships, converging on their position faster than light should allow. They hadn't just found a nest, they'd kicked the hornet's nest of the hegemony's most feared enforcer. The radiation storm began to clear, revealing the crippled silent judgment, and the vast, terrifying silhouette of the Cathar flagship. The unbroken will, emerging from the void like a god of judgment, its weapons arrays already glowing with apocalyptic power. Thorne's blood ran cold. They'd survived the hunter. Now the god had come to collect. The Ashen reckoning drifted, a wounded beast in the suddenly calm eye of the storm. The radiation bloom had faded, leaving behind an eerie silence broken only by the groans of stressed metal and the frantic beeping of dying systems. Emergency lights cast long, skeletal shadows. Smoke hung thick in the air, acrid and choking. On the command deck, the crew moved with grim efficiency, patching breaches, rerouting power, dragging the wounded to medbay. The initial adrenaline surge had burned out, leaving behind a hollow exhaustion and the chilling weight of what they'd just done and what was coming. Thorne stood amidst the chaos, his uniform torn and stained, the locket still clutched in his hand. He stared at the main view screen, now showing the terrifying reality, the unbroken will, a mountain of crystalline dreadnought, flanked by a dozen cruisers and destroyers, forming a perfect, inescapable cordon around the crippled silent judgment in the drifting reckoning. Grand Strategos, Kaelin's psychic commands still echoed in their minds, a cold brand of absolute certainty. Extinction is inevitable. "Report!" Thorne rasped, his voice raw. Kael approached, his face pale but set in hard lines. "Engines offline. Primary power at 12%. Shields gone. Weapons, mostly slag. The Scourge pulse fried half our own systems along with the nebula. We're dead in the water, Commander." He swallowed hard. The Raptors, all lost in the initial blast or the radiation surge. No fighters left. Ren stumbled onto the deck, her face smudged with soot, eyes wide with terror and something else, frenetic energy. "Commander! The data crystal. Before the pulse fried everything, I got a fragment. A big one." She shoved a data slate into Thorne's hand. On it, schematics flickered, Not of ships, but of planets. Dozens of them, marked with Cathar symbols. And dates. Recent dates. It's a ledger, Ren whispered, her voice trembling. A ledger of the erased worlds. Earth. It's just one entry. Entry number 73. A collective gasp went through the nearby crew. 73 worlds reduced to cosmic dust. The scale of the hegemony's casual genocide was staggering, monstrous. It wasn't just about Earth. It was a policy, a habit. Thorne's knuckles whitened on the slate. The grief for Earth was a familiar, crushing weight. But this was a revelation that twisted the knife deeper. They weren't unique in their tragedy. They were just the latest entry in a ledger of cosmic housekeeping. The rage that had fueled their desperate charge curdled into something colder, harder, a resolve forged in the knowledge of shared universal suffering. Kaelin doesn't just want us gone, Thorne said, his voice low and dangerous. He wants the idea of us gone, the memory, the possibility of resistance. He sees chaos, and he must erase it. He looked up, his storm cloud eyes sweeping over his battered crew. But chaos is what we are. It's in our bones, in our blood. It's why we're still here. Aboard the Unbroken Will, Grand Strategos, Kaelin observed the primitive human vessel through magnified sensors. It was a marvel of inelegant survival, a testament to the species' infuriating tenacity. He felt the lingering psychic residue of their defiance, a grating dissonance against the hegemony's perfect harmony. 73. The number echoed in his mind. 73 anomalies excised. 73 lessons taught. Yet here they were again, like weeds sprouting through polished crystal. Sub-Commander Zor. Kaelin's voice was a glacial hum, devoid of the faintest tremor. The silent judgment is crippled. Its crew, compromised by proximity to the chaotic radiation. They are no longer pure, they are tainted. Zor bowed lower, a flicker of unease in his multifaceted eyes. Your will, Grand Strategos? Scuttle it, Kaelin commanded, his tone as final as a tomb ceiling. Purge the contamination. Then, he gestured towards the Ashen reckoning on the display. Deploy the reclamation drones. Capture the vessel intact. Capture the crew. Alive. I wish to study this resilience, to understand the flaw in the pattern before I excise it permanently. A cold, intellectual curiosity glinted in his obsidian eyes. Perhaps their chaotic biology holds insights. Before they are unmade, Zir hesitated for a microsecond. Capturing primitives? Studying them? It was inefficient, messy, but questioning the Grand Strategos was unthinkable. It shall be done. On the reckoning, Ren was frantically working at a secondary console, her fingers flying. They're launching drones. Small, fast, boarding pods. They're not firing. They want us alive. Panic edged her voice. Capture meant vivisection. Experimentation. A fate worse than the quick death of the resonance cascade. Thorne's mind raced. Fight. They had nothing left. Run. Impossible. Surrender? Unthinkable. His eyes fell on the data slate, showing the ledger of erased worlds. 73 entries. 73 chances for allies, or just 73 more graves. Then he saw it. A symbol, repeated near several entries. Not Cathar. Older. Cruder. A stylized spiral galaxy with a single defiant star at its heart. A symbol Ren had flagged as unknown origin. Ren, Thorne said, a desperate idea forming. That symbol, the spiral with the star, can you broadcast it on all frequencies? Open channel, maximum power even if it fries the last of our comms. Ren blinked. Broadcast it? Why? It's just a symbol. Who would even do it? Thorne's command brooked no argument. Now, Ren shrugged, her fingers dancing. Boosting comms, rerouting emergency power, broadcasting on all bands. Signal's weak, but it's out there. She slammed the final key. The reckoning's last functional antenna flared, sending the simple, ancient symbol pulsing out into the void, a cosmic SOS written in starlight and desperation. The reclamation drones swarmed the Ashen reckoning like metallic insects, latching onto the hull with magnetic clamps, cutting through bulkheads with precision lasers. Kale organized the defense as best he could, leading armed crews with scavenged pulse rifles to the breach points. The fighting was brutal, close quarters, desperate. Humans fought with the ferocity of cornered animals, using pipes, jury-rigged shock prods, anything they could find. Cathar drones, sleek and silent, moved with lethal efficiency, their energy weapons precise. But humans were unpredictable. They used the ship's chaotic layout, set traps, sacrificed themselves to blow corridors. They bled, they screamed, but they didn't break. They adapted. Thorne fought alongside them, his movements economical, brutal. He took down a drone with a well-placed shot to its optical cluster, then used its own severed limb as a club against another. He saw Call take a glancing energy bolt to the shoulder, gritting his teeth, firing back until his rifle overheated. He saw Ren, armed only with a welding torch, blind a drone long enough for a crewman to shove a grenade down its intake. The reckoning became a charnel house, echoing with the sounds of combat and dying men. But they were being overwhelmed. Too many drones. Too little fight left. Just as the last defensive line at the command deck airlock buckled, a new sound cut through the din. Not Cathar, not human. A deep resonant thrum like the heartbeat of a giant. Then a voice, translated through the ship's dying comms, rough, guttural, filled with ancient fury. Cathar filth, you dare touch what bears the mark of the free stars. On the view screen, through the smoke and sparks, new ships emerged from the nebula's edge. Not sleek crystalline daggers. Brutes, angular, scarred, bristling with heavy weaponry that looked welded on. Hulls painted with that same spiral and star symbol, dozens of them, a ragtag fleet, but moving with coordinated predatory grace. The Free Stars Coalition. Survivors. Like them, from worlds erased. Worlds marked in Kalen's ledger. Chaos erupted anew, but this time it was chaos on their side. Free Stars gunships strafed the reclamation drones, their heavy cannons turning the metallic insects into molten slag. Their larger vessels engaged the Cathar cordon, their tactics wild, unpredictable, exploiting the Cathar's rigid formations. The Unbroken Will's perfect symmetry was shattered by the Coalition's chaotic assault. Kale! Ren! To the escape pods! Thorne yelled over the renewed cacophony. Now, the Coalition's buying us time, but the ship. Kale started. Go! Thorne shoved him towards the pod bay. That's an order. Get the crew out. Get the ledger data to the Coalition. I'll hold them here. He turned, grabbing a heavy pulse cannon from a fallen crewman, and charged back towards the main breach, a lone figure against the tide of Cathar drones still pouring in. He wasn't fighting to win, he was fighting to delay, to give his people a chance. Aboard the Unbroken Will, Kalen watched the unexpected intervention with cold fury. The Free Stars, a persistent, irritating gnat he'd failed to swat decades ago. Their symbol, the spiral and star. A relic of defiance. Chaos breeding more chaos. Eliminate the primitives, he commanded Zaire, his voice like cracking ice. Scuttle the reckoning, and obliterate that rabble fleet. Leave no witnesses, no symbols. Zari lead the orders. The Cathar fleet shifted, focusing their devastating firepower on the smaller, less shielded Free Stars vessels. Crystalline lances of energy tore through Coalition ships, reducing them to expanding clouds of debris. The Unbroken Will's main weapon charged. A sphere of pure annihilation forming at its prow aimed directly at the heart of the Coalition formation. On the reckoning, Thorne was a whirlwind of destruction, holding the command deck breach against impossible odds. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds, his breath ragged, but he stood firm, a bulwark of human defiance. He saw the escape pods jettisoning, streaking towards the Coalition ships. Good, he saw the Unbroken Will's weapon charging. No, he knew what he had to do. He activated his comm, patching into the Coalition flagship's open channel. His voice weak but clear. Coalition, this is Eris Thorne of the Ashen Reckoning. The Kylon's main weapon. It's targeting your flagship, its firing solution. It's vulnerable during the final charge cycle. Hit it now. With everything you have, don't let him fire. He didn't wait for a response. He turned, Not towards the drones, but towards the Reckoning's crippled engineering core. He knew the ship, knew its weaknesses, knew how to make it explode. The Coalition flagship, the Iron Resolve, received Thorne's message. Its commander, a grizzled veteran named Jurak, didn't hesitate. All ships, concentrate fire on the Unbroken Will's primary emitter, now, for the free stars, for every world they erased. A torrent of fire plasma, kinetic slugs, missile barrages, slammed into the charging weapon array of the Cathar flagship. Shields flared and collapsed under the unexpected focused assault. The sphere of annihilation flickered, destabilized. Aboard the Unbroken Will, alarms shrieked. Primary weapon destabilizing, catastrophic feedback imminent. Zaire Keelan remained impassive, but a flicker of something crossed his features. Not fear. Annoyance. Evasive maneuvers. Divert power. It was too late. The unstable energy sphere detonated inward, not outward. A contained but devastating explosion ripped through the forward section of the Unbroken Will. The crystalline spire cracked, great shards shearing off into space. The ship listed violently, power flickering. On the Reckoning, Thorne reached the engineering core. He bypassed the fried safety protocols, his hands moving with the instinct of a man who'd rebuilt this ship 100 times. He initiated a core breach sequence, manually overloading the fusion reactors. The ship groaned, a death rattle building in its bones. He looked at the locket one last time. On coming home, he slammed the final override. The Ashen Reckoning didn't just explode. It unraveled. A chain reaction of overloaded systems, volatile salvage, and the last dregs of the Scourge's chaotic energy created a blast wave of pure, disorganized fury. It wasn't clean like the Cathar's Erasure. It was messy, violent, alive with shrapnel and fire. It engulfed the remaining reclamation drones and slammed into the already damaged flank of the Unbroken Will, tearing open another massive breach. The shockwave threw the escape pods clear. Kale, Ren and the surviving crew watched in horror and awe as their home, their fortress, their last link to Earth became a brief, brilliant star in the void. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of dying fires and the groans of the crippled Cathar flagship. The Free Stars fleet regrouped, battered but victorious. The Cathar cordon, leaderless and damaged, began a slow, disciplined retreat. Cal stared at the expanding cloud of debris that was the Ashen Reckoning, tears cutting tracks through the grime on his face. Ren clutched the data slate containing the ledger, her knuckles white. They were alive. They had the ledger. They had allies. But they had lost their commander, their anchor, the man who carried the weight of Earth's ashes. As the escape pod drifted towards the Iron Resolve, Gale activated the comm, his voice thick with grief and newfound resolve. "This is Lieutenant Cale Vance of the Ashen Reckoning. We have the ledger. Entry 73. And all the others. The Cathar erased our worlds, but they didn't erase us." He looked at the retreating Cathar ships, then at the scarred but defiant Free Stars fleet. "Now, we erase them." Aboard the crippled Unbroken Will, Grand Strategos Kalen surveyed the damage. His flagship, the symbol of hegemony power, scarred and bleeding, his fleet retreating. The primitives, gone, but their defiance echoed louder than ever. And that symbol, the spiral and star, broadcast across the quadrant. He felt a cold, unfamiliar sensation. Not pain, not fear, doubt. The perfect order of the universe felt fragile. The chaotic vermin weren't just surviving. They were connecting, breeding more chaos. He accessed the ship's internal logs, pulling up the final moments of the silent judgment before its scuttling. He reviewed the sensor data from the Reckoning's last stand, and then he saw it, a detail missed in the heat of battle. A tiny, almost incandescent energy signature emanating from the human commander's location just before the core breach. Not weapon energy, not reactor energy, biological, a massive, localized surge of something. Adrenaline, neural activity. It defied Cathar biological models. It was off the charts. He cross-referenced it with the fragmented data recovered from the Reckoning's comms burst. The broadcast of the Free Stars symbol And then, with cold, dawning horror that felt like ice in his veins, he pulled up the original Sol System erasure logs. The final moments of Earth. The anomalous biosignatures detected during the resonance cascade. Signatures that spiked impossibly high as the planet was unmade. A terrible, impossible conclusion formed in his perfectly ordered mind. The humans, their chaotic biology, it wasn't just resilient. It was reactive. To extreme stress. To annihilation. The resonance cascade. It hadn't just erased Earth in its final agonizing moments. The sheer, collective terror and defiance of billions of humans had imprinted something onto the cascade wave itself. A psychic echo of pure, unadulterated will to survive. A ghost in the machine of the hegemony's ultimate weapon. And that echo. It was still out there. Resonating. Growing. Kalen stared into the void where the Ashen reckoning had been. The humans weren't just ghosts in the ashes. They were the ashes themselves. And ashes, he realized with a chilling certainty that shattered his worldview, could burn. The war didn't start with a declaration. It started with a whisper. A resonance. The psychic echo of Earth's final moments, amplified by the Ashen reckoning's sacrificial detonation, rippled through subspace. It wasn't loud. It was infectious. It touched the minds of other survivors, other Deathworlders scattered across the galaxy, species the Cathar had deemed anomalies and erased, or tried to. It touched the Free Stars Coalition, hardening their resolve into diamond. It touched the hidden enclaves, the forgotten outposts, the desperate remnants clinging to existence. It whispered a single undeniable truth. They can be hurt. They can be broken. Fight back. The Cathar hegemony, for the first time in millennia, was on the defensive. Not against a fleet, but against an idea. Chaos had become a contagion. Their rigid formations faltered against unpredictable guerrilla tactics. Their crystalline technology, so reliant on perfect order, glitched and failed in the presence of the growing psychic dissonance. Worlds they thought pacified rose up. Supply lines were severed by phantom raids. The ledger of erased worlds, now in the hands of the Coalition, became a rallying cry. A map of shared grief turned into a blueprint for vengeance. Calvance stood on the command deck of the Iron Resolve, now flagship of the burgeoning alliance of the erased. He was thinner, harder, the fire in his eyes tempered by loss but burning brighter than ever. Ren Solis, her hair now streaked with premature gray, worked tirelessly beside him, her fingers dancing over consoles that now integrated Cathar tech salvaged from a dozen battlefields. The ledger was their Bible, their strategy guide. They knew where the hegemony was vulnerable, where they had hidden their secrets. Scouts report the Cathar are fortifying the Corward shipyards, Ren said, her voice tight. They're building something new, bigger. The Final Order, they're calling it. A fleet-killing dreadnought, designed to contain the resonance, to silence the echo. Kale's jaw tightened. They're scared. He looked at the main view screen, showing a star map dotted with alliance symbols, the spiral and stars spreading like wildfire. Good. Let them be scared. He activated the fleet-wide comm, his voice carrying the weight of Thorne's legacy. All alliance vessels. Target the Corward shipyards. We hit them before the Final Order leaves dry dock. We show them their Final Order ends now. Aboard the partially repaired Unbroken Will, Grand Strategos Kalen observed the Alliance movements. The chaos was spreading faster than his models predicted. The resonance, it was evolving. It wasn't just an echo anymore, it was a presence. He could feel it, a constant, grating pressure against his ordered thoughts. It made his chatin itch. It made his perfect logic stutter. He reviewed the data again. The biological surge from Thorne, the resonance from Earth. The correlation was undeniable. Human death on a planetary scale under extreme duress generated a psychic energy that disrupted Cathar technology and resonated with other oppressed species. It was the ultimate weapon against order, the weaponized grief of the erased. A cold, terrible plan formed in his mind. Not defense. Not containment. Exploitation. If the resonance was born from mass human death, then to control it he needed to create it. On a scale never before imagined. He needed a new Earth, a new source of that chaotic energy. But not just any humans, he needed the source. The epicenter, the last known bastion of pure, unadulterated human defiance. He accessed the hegemony's deepest archives, cross-referencing sensor ghosts, fragmented comms intercepts, and the psychic resonance patterns. He found it, a faint, persistent signature, hidden deep within the galactic ring, a signature that matched the unique bioresonance of Earth's final moments and Thorne's last stand. A hidden colony, the last true cradle of humanity. New Terra. Kylan's multifaceted eyes gleamed with cold, ruthless purpose. He wouldn't just erase New Terra, he would harvest its death scream. He would channel the resonance of billions dying into the final order, turning the Alliance's greatest weapon into the hegemony's ultimate tool. He would use their grief to silence all chaos forever. Order would be restored, not by erasure but by consumption. Zara, Kalan commanded, his voice devoid of all emotion, colder than the void. Divert all resources to the final order. Prepare the resonance siphon array, and mobilize the entire 7th Fleet. He paused, the weight of his decision settling like a shroud. Target, New Terra. We will bring the ashes to heal. The warning came too late. The Alliance scouts, stretched thin, missed the sheer scale of the Cathar mobilization. By the time the sensor ghosts reached the Iron Resolve, the 7th Fleet, led by the nearly complete Final Order, was already dropping out of warp at the edge of the New Terra system. Kale stared at the display, his blood turning to ice. New Terra, blue oceans, green continents, the last echo of Earth, and swarming towards it, a fleet of death. Ren, signal New Terra. Evacuate. Now. Ren's fingers flew, but her face was grim. Comms jammed. Heavy. Cathar. Encryption. They've got the system locked down tight. We're too far. Even at max burn, we won't get there in time. Despair threatened to crush Kala. History was repeating. Another Earth. Another erasure. Thorne's sacrifice for nothing. Then Ren's eyes widened. Wait. Commander. Look. She pointed to a secondary display showing deep-range passive sensors. The resonance. It's spiking. Off the charts. But it's not from New Terra. It's around it. Like the planet itself is singing. Kale leaned closer. The data was chaotic, beautiful, terrifying. New Terra wasn't just a planet. It was a beacon. The collective hope, the defiance, the sheer life of the last humans. It was resonating with the echo of Earth, amplifying it, creating a protective field of pure chaotic will. The Cathar fleet was slowing, their formations breaking as their systems struggled against the psychic storm. They're not just hiding, Kale breathed, a spark of desperate hope igniting. They're fighting back with their very existence. Then we give them a chance to keep fighting, Kale roared, slamming his fist on the console. All Alliance ships, maximum burn, intercept course. We punch through that fleet and get to New Terra. For Earth, for Thorne, for everyone they erased. Charge! The Alliance fleet, a ragged collection of salvaged warships and converted freighters, surged forward, a wave of chaotic defiance against the ordered wall of Cathar might. The Battle of New Terra was not a battle of fleets. It was a battle of concepts. Order versus chaos. Erasure versus existence. The Cathar fought with precision, their crystalline lances carving neat lines of destruction. The Alliance fought with ferocity, using the planet's resonance field as cover, ramming ships, overloading reactors, fighting in ways that made no tactical sense but shattered Cathar predictability. Kale piloted the Iron Resolve like a demon, weaving through Cathar fire, drawing their attention, creating openings for smaller ships to slip through towards the planet. Ren, her voice hoarse from shouting commands, coordinated the chaotic dance, her mind finding patterns in the madness. They saw Cathar cruisers suddenly veer off course, their crews overwhelmed by the psychic pressure. They saw Alliance fighters, painted with the spiral and star, dive into the maws of Cathar dreadnoughts, taking them down in balls of fire. But the final order loomed, A monstrous vessel larger than the Unbroken Will, its hull bristling with the resonant siphon array. A forest of crystalline spires designed to drink the death scream of new Terra. It moved with terrifying purpose, ignoring the chaos around it, heading straight for the planet. Kale knew they couldn't stop it with conventional weapons. The siphon array would absorb their fire, feed it to the resonance. They needed to get inside to destroy it from within. "Ren," Kale said, his voice calm amidst the storm. "Plot a collision course, not with the final order, with its main siphon conduit, maximum power to forward shields. We're going in." Ren paled. "Kale, that's suicide. The shields won't hold." "They don't need to hold forever," Kale said, a ghost of Thorne's grim smile touching his lips. "Just long enough." He activated the ship-wide comm one last time. "All Alliance ships, focus fire on the final order's siphon array. Give us an opening. This ends now." The iron resolve, battered and bleeding, broke from the main fight, a lone dagger aimed at the heart of the Cathar's new weapon. Cathar point defense batteries swiveled, unleashing a storm of fire. Shields flared, buckled and failed. Hull plates vaporized. The ship screamed in protest. Inside, Kale held the controls steady, his eyes fixed on the growing spire of the siphon array. Ren worked frantically, rerouting power, trying to keep the engines alive. 30 seconds to impact, she yelled over the... On the final order, Kalen watched the primitive ship's suicidal run. Illogical, wasteful, predictable. He activated the siphon array's defensive protocols. "Let it come. Its destruction will only feed the resonance we harvest." The iron resolve hit the siphon conduit not with a bang, but with a sickening crunch of tearing metal and shattering crystal. It embedded itself deep within the structure. Kale and Ren, thrown against their restraints, knew they had seconds. "Ren, the core breach sequence." Kale gasped, blood trickling from his temple. Ren nodded, her fingers flying over the cracked console. "Initiating now." Deep within the iron resolve, the fusion core went critical. But this time the explosion wasn't just fire and shrapnel. It was infused with the iron resolve's own resonance, amplified by the siphon array it was embedded in, and supercharged by the planetary field of new Terra. The blast wasn't contained, it propagated. The resonance siphon array didn't just break, it detonated. A wave of pure, unfiltered psychic energy. The grief of Earth, the defiance of the reckoning, the hope of new Terra, the rage of the Alliance, exploded outwards. It wasn't destructive energy, it was liberating energy. Across the battlefield, Cathar ships didn't explode. Their crystalline matrices resonated. Not with order, but with the chaotic song of the erased. Systems overloaded, not from damage but from understanding. From feeling the weight of 73 worlds, the rigid formations dissolved into confusion. Crews for the first time felt the echo of the suffering they'd caused. The perfect order of the hegemony shattered. On the final order, Kalen felt the wave hit him like a physical blow. The cold logic of his mind was flooded with images. Earth dissolving, the reckoning burning, new Terra's defiant song, the faces of billions he'd erased. He felt their terror, their rage, their love for their lost homes. The weight of it was crushing, unbearable. His perfect control snapped. A single choked sound escaped his mandibles. Not a click, not a hum, but something raw, alien to him. Grief. The final order, its siphon array destroyed. Its crew, reeling from the psychic backlash, began to drift, powerless. Silence fell over the new Terra system. Not the silence of void, but the silence after a storm. The Canar fleet was broken. Adrift. Their will to fight extinguished by the resonance they'd tried to weaponize. The Alliance ships, battered but victorious, formed a protective cordon around the blue-green world. Kale and Ren's escape pod drifted near the wreckage of the Iron Resolve and the crippled Final Order. They were alive, barely. They watched as Alliance shuttles began rescuing Cathar survivors not as prisoners but as witnesses, to carry the truth back to the hegemony core. On the surface of new Terra, humans emerged from shelters, looking up at the sky not with fear but with awe. They felt the resonance too, Not as a weapon but as a connection. To Earth. To Thorne. To everyone who came before. They were not alone. Weeks later, aboard a newly commissioned Alliance flagship built from the salvaged heart of the Final Order and christened the Ashen Crown, Cale Vance stood on the command deck. Below, the ruins of the Cathar Corward shipyard smoldered. The hegemony was broken, not by conquest, but by the weight of its own sins made manifest. The ledger of erased worlds was now a charter for the new alliance. Wren approached, holding a data slate. The last Cathar envoy just transmitted their formal surrender. Commander. They want to know what we demand. Cale looked out at the stars. No longer a void of indifference, but a tapestry woven with the threads of the erased and the defiant. He thought of Thorne, of Earth, of the ashes that burn. We don't demand anything, Cale said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of galaxies. We offer a choice. Join the chorus or be forgotten. He turned to Wren, a new kind of fire in his eyes, not just rage but purpose. Set course for the next system on the ledger, Wren. There are still ghosts in the ashes, and it's time we gave them a voice. As the Ashen Crown turned, its engines humming with a power born of chaos and resilience, Cale opened the locket Thorne had given him before the final battle. Inside, next to the picture of Thorne's family, was a single perfect grain of ash from Earth, preserved in stasis. He held it up, letting the starlight catch it. The Cathar had erased their homeworld. They had tried to erase their memory. But they had forgotten one thing. Ashes are fertile ground. And from the ashes of Earth, humanity hadn't just survived. They had risen, not as victims, not as ghosts, as lords of the cosmos.